Whew, all right, in the cabin. Time to drive this thing and talk about what it feels like. Excuse the sun, it's in my face right now. But let's start this thing up and see what it sounds like. That sounds pretty good. I'm gonna pop this thing into Eco just for now. What I really like is how when I'm in Eco mode, I let off. It tends to burble every now and then. Oh my gosh. So this car is rocking the N26 engine. Now there are two variations of this car. There is an N20 and an N26. They're basically the same motor, but the N26 is just the more eco-friendly version of it. So they add the secondary cat, and the fuel injectors, I believe, are hand-picked rather than just randomly sorted. Now, like any BMW, they're gonna feel really high quality. You know, the interior trim, the way it handles, everything just feels extremely solid. Everything is very tactile, even the infotainment system, the pedals, they have a nice sort of rebound to it. The steering feel is nice and tight. This car also handles really differently from when I first got it. So what I've done to the handling is I added a strut bar to the front suspension. It just tightens the steering a little bit more, so it's a little sharper to drive. And also the bigger aftermarket wheels that I put on here adds a lot more grip, so it's a lot more confidence inspiring in corners. And with the bigger contact patch on the ground, it actually makes the steering slightly heavier, which is what I like. I love a heavy steering feel. I also feel just so much more hugged into these seats because they're so tight. I can't really move that much, so the body roll has been decreased. Now surprisingly, the suspension on this car is already extremely low. That's also because this is a rear-wheel drive model. The X-Drives are a little bit higher up. There's very little body roll in this car, and it's really impressive as a stock suspension setup. Eventually I do want to get coilovers for this car so I can really dial in the feel of this car, but even with the stock suspension, it handles really, really well. Now another thing I have done to the motor is a VRSF charge pipe. Now charge pipes on these cars are usually made out of plastic and they're not reliable. They tend to blow. So by upgrading to the VRSF one, it's made out of metal. The reliability is a little better, so it won't break on you. It's also going to be able to handle more boost. So if you do a tune on it, this car is not tuned yet, you're able to push more power without any sort of issue, without worrying that something's going to explode. I also have the catalyst downpipe, which allows the airflow to move through the exhaust a little better, also louder. It also improves throttle response, so I can definitely feel the pedal has been a lot more instantaneous compared to when it was on a stock catalytic converter. This car stock is pushing somewhere around the 250 horsepower range, but with the downpipe and my exhaust setup, it's pushing closer to around 280 right now. After all these aftermarket parts that have been installed on here and their weight reduction with the seats and also the exhaust, because it's so much lighter now underneath, I'm able to get about 0 to 60 in about 5.3 seconds or so. It's not ready for stage 2 yet. For that, I'm gonna have to get an intercooler, an intake, all that jazz. So for now, I'm thinking about getting a stage 1 tune in the near future. I'm gonna do a short little pull right here, see how it is. That exhaust, man. I love how BMWs, they pop every time you shift. Now this car has a 8-speed automatic transmission. It does come in a manual, but I didn't get that because I wanted this to be a daily driver. Now with this being my daily and it being this loud, I know some people might be like, isn't it a little obnoxious for it to be a daily car? Personally, I don't really have an issue with it. I tend to drive a lot as well, and I kind of just got used to the sound. I gotta admit, I probably have some hearing damage at this point just from listening to it, but it's an enjoyable experience when you can really hear the motor. I know a lot of people don't like the sound of the 4-cylinder engines. It just doesn't sound that good compared to obviously a 6-cylinder and up. But surprisingly, this thing doesn't sound all that bad. There's also a lot of turbo noise, by the way. I can just hear the turbo spooling. Wow, this thing really pulls, man. For a 4-cylinder, you'll be impressed what a 4-cylinder can do. Little cop check. always so fun going on these roads because it's nice and twisty. You know, there's something nice about driving a slow car fast versus a fast car slow. With a slower car like this, and I'm not saying this is like super slow, it's still pretty quick for what it is. On a street, for street use, a 4-cylinder BMW is more than enough power. It's a lot of fun because you can actually push it to its limits. You can let the RPMs go all the way out, and you can really see what the potential this car has. A lot of people have come up to me when they see this car, they're like, oh, why didn't you just get an M4 instead of getting a base model and dumping all this money into it? Now, for one, the reason why I didn't get an M4 is because I couldn't afford it at the time. Second is, I didn't really need the performance of the M4. I was looking for something reliable, comfortable, something that's also fun to drive, and something that I can beat on all day long. And honestly, I would feel kind of bad if I had an M4 if I were to, you know, do Uber in it. The gas mileage isn't going to be that great. The reliability is questionable. Also, the amount of miles I'm putting on the car, with it being such an expensive car, I would feel bad with the resale value. Do I desire to have a faster, more higher performance handling car? Yeah. But is that what I need right now? No. I feel like in the car space, especially in the Beamer world, the base model cars don't really get that much love. The base model cars, people kind of overlook them and they just think they're trash and that only M cars is the way to go. I was a valet driver for like half a year and I drove all sorts of sports cars, all sorts of cars from Porsches, Beamers, Audis, whatever. You know, I've drove basically every possible BMW from base models to M cars. And honestly, after driving all these cars, there's really not that much of a difference. Driving an M4 and driving this car, I couldn't really feel that much of a difference, besides the M4 felt a little heavier, a little more powerful. Now obviously, as much as you modify a base model car, it's never gonna be an M car. Ooh, we have a 911 Turbo S right here. I'm gonna back in next to him. There's also a 430, the new G series one next to it. Looks pretty sweet. Wow, wow, wow. Would you look at that? Woo!